Okay, good morning or good afternoon, depending upon where you're logging in from today. Thank you so much for joining our Redefining Student Engagement webinar. I wanted to talk to you a little bit this afternoon about authentic student engagement and a real critical issue for us out there today. I'm Margie Van Dieven. I currently serve as the Education Branch Chief for the Missouri Department of Conservation and formerly served as the Commissioner of Education for the state of Missouri. I'll be moderating today's webinar live from the Boone County Nature School in the state of Missouri, which has become one of my favorite places to visit to see real authentic learning in action. So happy to be with all of you today. We have an exciting lineup planned for you, and we all know that webinars are only as good as meeting the needs of those participants who have joined us. So please do not be shy. Use the question and answer feature throughout the session and ask questions, offer comments, share what's happening in your context. So let me just share a little bit about how this webinar came to be. It's a result of the Aspen Cross-Partisan Education Policy Network, which brings together leaders from philanthropy, education policy, and K-12 higher education nonprofits and think tanks. It identifies shared priorities for improving U.S. education across political divides. And one of the emerging issues that came to the forefront was student engagement. So this series responds to that consensus, examining how student voice, authentic engagement, and civic learning strengthen education systems. In the last webinar, we learned a lot about the shift from student voice to co-agency. And today we're going to spend some time talking about the importance of authentic student engagement and how student agency and student engagement can work together to shift educational experiences in our schools. So I spent over 8 years as Missouri's Commissioner of Education and now lead the conservation education section at the Missouri Department of Conservation. A lot of people have asked me how I would make that step from the education world into conservation world, and I have to share with you that that stretch was not very far. In both of these roles, one of the primary focus areas for me has been specifically on how do we really continue to create learning experiences that truly engage students and prepare them for the rapidly changing world in which we live. So today's conversation, From Achiever to Explorer, is about exactly that shift. Engaging students in their learning through place-based active learning experiences as we thoughtfully balance an increasingly AI generated world with cognitive development that comes through exploration, curiosity, and of course, our real world discovery that you'll be hearing more about. So we're going to hear from a Brookings Institution researcher on what this means globally. One of our nature school teachers is here and will be showing us what it looks like in practice. And most importantly, we're going to hear from a student leader who's actually living it. So this isn't theoretical. It's happening. It's real. And we're here to learn how to make it happen for more students across the country. So before we head into the panel discussion, we're going to hear from Dr. Rebecca Winthrop, who shares some of the research on the education for AI era and what engagement models actually work. Again, please use the question and answer chat portion and provide comments or ask our panelists questions that we'll be able to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation today. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Winthrop. She is a senior fellow and a director of the Center of Universal Education at the Brookings Institution, where she leads global efforts to advance quality education that equips young people with the skills to thrive in work, life, and citizenship. She currently leads the Brookings Global Task Force on AI and Education and co-leads the Family Engagement of Education Network, advising governments, foundations, and international organizations worldwide. Her career spans more than 2 decades of global leadership, including serving as head of education at the International Rescue Committee, where she oversaw programs in more than 20 conflict-affected countries. A leading voice on education, innovation, and equity, she is the author of several influential books, including The Disengaged 2019. She holds a PhD from Columbia University Teachers College. And I'll just share that on a personal note, I was able to see this presentation last summer with the Education Commission of the States, found it highly compelling. And so we're here to welcome you. The floor is yours, Rebecca. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Margie, for your service, of course, now in a new capacity, and for your warm introduction. I'm going to share my screen. Let me just, there is the slides. Um, can you guys see it? Does it look normal? Okay, thumbs up. So, really, again, lovely to be here. Very happy that the Aspen Institute is diving into this really important question, particularly in a cross-partisan way. So, I'm going to be talking to you about two bodies of research. One is around a book that I co-authored with Jenny Anderson on student engagement, which really was a deep dive in the US of why kids don't like school, basically. And it was a large research study with over 65,000 students participating and lots of qualitative research. And I'm going to be talking to you about generative artificial intelligence and students' well-being. We just finished a big deep dive on this topic through the Brookings Global Task Force on AI in Education, which I lead, and have a range of findings. And of course, these two things link together because thinking about boosting student engagement and motivation is all the more important in an age of generative AI. So, first, let's talk a little bit and ground ourselves of the world in which students are now finding themselves when it comes to generative AI. Our work and our task force was very focused on students and their learning and development and in sort of K-12 systems and um, what are the risks? What are the benefits? Are we headed in the right direction? Those were our questions. Some of the things we found, which are very pertinent to thinking about how students are engaging in their education and their learning, are that there are very blurred lines between education for technology for education purposes, technology for communication purposes, technology for entertainment. Young people, if they live in the US and have a device and broadband, which is most young people, though I should say not all, they are accessing AI anywhere and everywhere. One high school student that I spoke to in one of our focus groups for the research process said, well, my high school banned ChatGPT, but it's not a big deal. We all use Meta AI or Snapchat AI to do our homework. So we go on social media, there's AI friends. You can talk to them, complain about your parents, and then you can take a picture of your math problem set and say, please do this for me. So this is a really new world that young people are navigating. The other thing that we found is that the commercial AI companies are really interested in students for many reasons that you can imagine. One being that they know that education is a major use case of this general purpose, general consumer facing uh, product. This is 2025 usage data of ChatGPT around the globe. It massively dips in the summer when most schools around the globe are closed. And we know that there's a very concerted effort by the large commercial uh, frontier labs who are creating chatbots to try to get them to be used, get into schools, get them to be used more for education purposes. So the thing we also found is that AI can cause many harms. These are in the orange, but it also can be very beneficial if used very well. So we're not going to go through all of this. This is sort of a scatter plot of all the risks we found and all the benefits. But ultimately, what we found was that currently how AI is implemented today, the risks are overshadowing the benefits of AI. And that is because the risks that generative AI poses to students are of very different nature. They're undermining their ability to develop cognitively, socially, emotionally. This includes largely from use, sort of unscaffolded, open-ended, long-form discussions of young people directly with AI chatbots or AI friends or companions. And it's undermining sort of their ability to be independent learners, to take feedback. And that is foundational to even accessing the benefits that AI does pose, which largely come from very narrow, strategic, school teacher mediated AI strategic use around time savings, more accessible teaching and learning materials, tailoring reading, materials to kids' levels, helping kids who are multilingual or neurodivergent, new forms of assessment. Those are all good things. But again, that's not how most kids are experiencing generative AI. So, what does that mean for student motivation and student engagement? So, before we think about the two together, I want to do a deep dive on what we really mean by student engagement in our work, my work with my colleague for the disengaged team. So one of the things we found was that it is actually quite difficult for adults, teachers, parents, coaches to see fully student engagement. What they see is behavior most easily. Are kids coming to school? Are they raising their hands? Are they doing their homework? Are they, following instructions? Do they seem engaged? But there's a whole other dimension of student engagement, which is much more internal. It's about how kids feel. Do they feel they belong? It's about their thinking process. There's a favorite story of mine that illustrates this. A young man named Peter, who we interviewed, had lost recess. He was upper elementary school. He was really didn't have a good day at school. And I said, well, why? He said, well, I didn't do my worksheet. And I said, well, why didn't you get your worksheet done? He said, well, there was a picture on the wall next to me of the solar system. And we just learned that the Earth was spinning. And I spent the whole class thinking, how does everything stay on the Earth if it spins? How are the trees and the plants and the people? He was having this he was super engaged in the class topic that he got so engaged in thinking about it. He didn't finish his worksheet and he got in trouble. So this was a good school, a good teacher. So just to say it's hard, it can be hard to pick up. One thing we do know, which is I'm sure why the Cross-Partisan Network highlighted student engagement, is that underneath our chronic absenteeism problem, our NAEP scores problem, our adolescent mental health crisis, sits disengagement. It is by no means the only thing fueling these, but it cuts across all of them. And we know the more engaged young people are, the more their outcomes on all the things we care about will improve. And we really found that what we need to do as a sector and as a field is really find a new way to see student engagement. And so we discovered that there were really four ways that young people engaged in their learning. It's not so simple as engaged or disengaged. You have young people who are disengaged on all fronts except for behaviorally, where they show up to school in passenger mode. These are the kids who are coasting, doing the bare minimum. They might like to go to school to see their friends, but they don't really love what they're learning. They're not that interested. They're rushing through homework. Many of them get good grades. So many of them are not challenged, by no means all of them, but many do. Then you've got kids in achiever mode. These are the kids trying to get a perfect gold star on everything put in front of them. And they are developing good skills. They're organized, goal-oriented, ambitious. Striving for excellence is good. But many of them are becoming great followers. The number one thing that kids who spent a lot of time in achiever mode told us that they just hated about school, it's just the most annoying thing, was when teachers didn't tell them exactly what to do to get an A. And that is not a skill set that is going to stand kids well in an age of generative AI when things are changing and they're going to have to figure things out for themselves. There also was a great deal of mental health issues for kids in achiever mode, we found. When a kid would get a B plus, they thought the world was ending. So not a ton of resilience. Then you've got kids in resistor mode. These are the kids who everyone dubs, quote unquote, the problem children. They're avoiding, they're disrupting, they're the class clown, taking long bathroom breaks, skipping school, not turning in homework. It can be very, very difficult to parent and teach kids in resistor mode. But we found that these kids have something going for them. They are using their voice, often inappropriately, in a way that signals to the adults in their environment, this isn't working for me. And when the conditions change, and we're going to hear about that from students and teachers and the rest of our panelists to support more relevant learning, hands-on learning, and freedom, the kids in resistor mode move to explore mode much more quickly than kids in achiever mode or passenger mode. And explore mode is where we really want kids to spend a chunk of time. This is where they care about the learning journey, not just the grade at the end, like the kids in achiever mode. They're building curiosity, they're building a lot of learning resilience, they're knowing how to fail and pick themselves back up. And we know that kids move between these modes depending on their environment. So every kid can be in explore mode. It's just that they often don't have the environment and the context and the relevant learning experiences that support them getting into explore mode. And what we did find is that many kids describe their overall experience in school as being in one mode or another, kind of getting stuck. This is a very funky graph, but I'm going to talk you through it. At the bottom is third through 12th grade. And this is from research with our colleagues at Transcend that we jointly did, looking at how kids' motives of engagement change over time. So basically, you see a big switch between upper elementary and middle school. That's where all the colors are moving. And in elementary school, kids are in achiever mode, they're in passenger mode. There's more kids in the green explorer mode, not that many in resistor mode. But then all of a sudden, they hit middle school, and in middle school and high school, there's a lot more passengers, less achieving, more resisting, and less than 4% of kids said that they regularly spend time in explore mode in middle school and high school, which to me is one of the biggest red, five alarm fires, red flags for how we're preparing young people in an age of AI. So, in conclusion, we really argue that student engagement is often seen as the cherry on the top of the ice cream sundae, but it really is the ice cream if we want to advance learning outcomes, attendance, well-being, and prepare kids for a world of AI. And you can certainly stay in touch and get all of these resources. These are QR codes to the books, to the report. I do a LinkedIn newsletter every week on this, but also we are starting to create parent tip sheets on some of these topics around AI. And with that, I thank you, and I will stop sharing screens and pass back to you, Margie.
Rebecca, thank you so much. I love the ice cream piece, and I certainly agree with you on that one. It's something we need to be focusing on. Another point, certainly, I've been getting lots of questions from parents, so I'm glad to see that you have some information for them. They're eagerly seeking that. But we're going to shift a little bit of gear here and talk with our panelists who have joined us today. So Rebecca will remain part of this panelist. Again, I'm going to ask you out there if you have questions or comments to feel free to use the chat to enter those. But we have conveniently two Joes with us today, conveniently or not, but they have agreed to be called Joe Squared. But we're going to start by I'll be asking them to just provide a real brief introduction, and then I'll jump into some questions. So Joe Brown, would you kick off just a quick introduction about who you are?
Absolutely. So my name's Joe Brown. I've been teaching for 22 years. And 4 years ago, I made the switch from middle school science to being an outdoor educator with the launch of the Boone County Nature School program. And this is just a super exciting time for me and for my fellow teachers that work here. And let's see, I'm married. I've been married to my wife for 20, almost 23 years, got two children. And one thing I'm super passionate about is how outdoor education can be leveraged to improve student mental health.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Now we'll transition to Joe Lewis. Joe, would you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So just first and foremost, thank y'all so much for this opportunity. My name is Joe Lewis the fourth. I attend Winfield Senior High School in Winfield, Louisiana, and I'm currently serving as the National Southern Region Vice President for Future Business Leaders of America, the State Secretary for Louisiana 4-H, and I was formerly an area officer as the Area 2 President for Louisiana FFA. I've been incredibly involved in student leadership at different levels from local to state and national, and just thank y'all for this opportunity. I can't wait to get some questions.
Okay, well, we're there then. Thank you so much. We're going to stick with you, Joe Lewis. And sounds like you don't have a lot going on there. That's pretty exciting that you're that actively involved with so many things. But we're going to start off with the first question, really kind of bringing us back to some of Rebecca's research, where she talks about moving from achiever mode to more of an explorer mode. Have you experienced that shift personally, and what does it look like from a student perspective to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in going from achiever mode to explorer mode, something that I've found is, especially in student leadership, you really need to be able to find your why. Why are you engaged? Why do you want to achieve what you want to achieve? Why do you want to, get all of these accomplishments? And that's something that I've definitely gone through, figuring out why it is that I am engaged in student leadership, why it is that I do want to excel, and how that translates into my future and into the various things that I want to do, as I, go through life. So I've really learned that going into explorer mode is kind of taking a step back, examining why you want to do the things that you do, and really figuring out what's most important to you while giving yourself room for creativity, room to make mistakes, room to pick yourself back up when you fall down. Really just figuring out your why and why you want to do the things that you do.
That is great, Joe. And now I think you know why so many people want to hear directly from students who can tell us that firsthand. Um, and and I'm going to jump over to Joe Brown now, where when I first heard Rebecca's presentation about Explorer Mode, I immediately went to that's the Boone County Nature School. So, Joe, the Boone County Nature School is a unique learning model that touches thousands of students from hundreds of classes each year. Will you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Absolutely. So the Boone County Nature School is really special for a lot of reasons. The first of which is really the foundation for the program, and that is that it is a partnership between our state's Missouri Department of Conservation and also a public school, Columbia Public Schools. And so between CPS and MDC, this partnership has offered an opportunity to have a nature school, a public nature school. It's also pretty unique because, unlike other traditional classrooms where one group of students spends the entire year with a set of teachers or a teacher, here at the Boone County Nature School, our students, all 1,500 fifth graders out of the entire CPS fifth grade population get to come out to the nature school and learn. And so we're talking 7 full days on site for every one of these students. So we have students in class here every day of the school year. And those dates are divided into really 3 sessions. So a fall session where students are coming and learning mostly about ecosystems because this is a standards driven content, right? And then in the winter, when they return, they're learning mostly about human impacts on the world. And when they come back in the spring, they're learning about sustainability. They're presenting a sustainability presentation that their class back at their school has been working on all year. They are also learning about karst topography because at that point in time in fifth grade curriculum, that is where students are in a unit called Water Planet, where they're learning about how the atmosphere and the geosphere interact. As far as curriculum goes, and I touched on this a bit ago, but what all of that is rooted in for us is something called standards, nope, place-based education. Place-based education means that students are learning with a lens of where they are, their geography, but also their people, their community, their ecology. And what that does for us, it allows us to leverage their prior knowledge of their place, yes, but also the connections that they have and the relevance of something being right in front of you. And there's some pictures popping up on the screen. These are students that are coming on site and learning not only content, and this is what I love about the nature school, but also an outdoor skill every session. So on the left, we're looking at students in the fall session, and they learned how to fish the previous day. And I want you to notice, if you look closely, they are all baiting their own hooks. These are students that the day before mostly would have said they will never touch a worm. And here they are baiting their own hooks. There are opportunities there, though, beyond the outdoor skill that is really powerful for our students. For example, the rigor associated with this experience is a little different than it looks. Following the baiting of the worms, every student that catches a fish comes to a large graph that has space for students to measure the length and the mass of that fish, and then they graph their data point on our big graph. Well, as the points continue up the graph, eventually they start to see this trend. Of course, the longer the fish, the greater tendency of that fish to have a greater mass. But then we overlay on that the expected weights of fish in a pond for those fish to be healthy. And kids can analyze the health of their individual fish, but also looking at the entire trend, analyze the health of the entire pond ecosystem. And there's one picture up right now. I love this picture because something that, and from my middle school background, it's just like what I'm looking at here is 100% engagement. If you look closely, every single student is here at their pond ecosystem analysis with their hands in pond water, identifying organisms and using those to build the food web that they need to be able to create as a part of that standard. And something I love about this picture too is I bet you can't pick out the teacher in the picture. So if you look closely, the teacher is there, but notice the learning posture, the leaning in. I've got a class full of explorers here. The teacher happens to be the one in the pink hat. So if you see her towards the top. Anyway, a lot of good stuff, and it's a super fun place to work, but also a very fulfilling place to work. Here's a picture of some of our extra programs. We do evening and weekend programs. And on the left, one of my colleagues, Mr. Gabe Nichols, that is his son, demonstrating how to tap a maple tree in our forest so that the students there and adults can learn how to tap trees. It's called maple sugaring, and they can use that to make maple syrup. On the right, that is my daughter, Margot, and she is so good at monarch tagging. On our monarch tagging night, I just had her lead the whole thing, and I just got to sit back and be proud. And so this is really a whole community approach to learning as well. Lots of support, lots of involvement from kids, lots of explorer mode.
Wonderful, Joe. Thank you so much. We're going to jump back to Joe Lewis, and you just kind of talked about some of the leadership roles you've had, which are significant positions in FBLA, 4-H, FFA. They're all very different, but the experiences provide great learning opportunities for us. How has that hands-on learning shaped who you are as a leader today?
Yeah, absolutely. So each organization, while they all have similar missions, is incredibly unique. They, bring out different things in each individual, with FBLA bringing out the business side of a person, getting them to be more engaged with how business works in the United States and in the world and different things like that. But you can go to FFA, and it's how agriculture and how important it is and how you can, dive deeper into how agriculture affects us, which it affects everything that we touch, from our clothing, our food, our shelter. But all in all, specifically with me, it's given me a greater appreciation for agriculture. And then with FBLA, it's really taught me how to employ the soft skills that FBLA gives you into the workforce. But all in all, as a leader, something that I've learned is the true essence of leadership is a leadership style that I like to employ, called laissez-faire. And it's really let them do. So getting people to honestly lead themselves, minimal instruction, being able to express what they, are good at, and doing that in a way that allows them to be creative. So leadership to me, and how it's developed in me through the organizations, has really been bringing out the best in those that I lead. making sure that they have the tools to succeed, while also ensuring that each and every person under my leadership has an opportunity to give constructive criticism to me or to any other person involved in the organization.
That's great, Joe. Thank you so much. And certainly can see that in your communication style here today. That's fantastic. So, Joe Brown, I'm going to jump back to you. A little bit of a follow-up on that. We talked about some of the things that are available at the nature school, hearing what Joe just said and thinking about what you've seen in your classroom or outdoors or in the classroom. What changes do you observe in students when they engage in outdoor learning?
Yeah, so the changes are really incredible. They're huge. So even within the first days or the first few hours rather of students coming on site, we see students, many of them that don't really have access to much outdoor space. And so there comes with that, with the help from media, there comes with that an unreasonable fear a lot of the times that there is something that will bite, sting, or kill them if they approach our prairie or walk into our forest. And so, even after a few hours, we have that fear, which works in opposition to curiosity. Like you're not going to lean in and be curious if you're afraid you're about to get hurt, right? We have that fear melts away. We take it easy. We have a gentle move into those outdoor spaces. And I mean, you saw the pictures. We have kids that when they walk off of the school bus that are afraid of the grasshopper that's on the ground in front of them, that will of course eat them alive, they think. And by the second day, I mean, you saw them, they have their hands in pond water, picking up macroinvertebrates and identifying these critters. And so there's a huge shift there. The most quantifiable shift, though, and this one is really exciting, is our behavioral data. So Columbia Public Schools, there's 21 elementary schools in Columbia Public Schools. And you could imagine there are, over time, many discipline referrals that are built up for each school over the course of the year. And of those thousands that come from the elementary level, Boone County Nature School last year had two. That's it. And the behavioral data, that is, again, that is quantitative support of this idea that engagement is happening at very high levels here. Students don't lean out from the learning and start picking on each other or arguing when they're engaged with the learning. They're going to lean in, they're going to leave each other alone. And when they are interacting with each other, it is collaborative to discover a solution, to build an idea, to look for evidence to support their claims. And so it's a really wonderful thing.
Thank you, Joe. That's great news. And we're going to tie that back to Rebecca now in some of the research that you've been doing, Rebecca. And I'm sure you've heard similar stories, but I'd like to know what does the research tell us about why these models work and what it means practically for administrators and policymakers to know that?
So I just love this story of the school, and the Joe Squareds both gave great examples. One is in your outdoor school where it's incredible because many times parents have to pay for that type of an experience, and this is available to, as far as I can understand it, every middle school kid in your school district, in Columbia Public School District, which is a huge deal. And then I love Joe Lewis's stories of all the extracurricular time and where he's learning all these skills which are outside of the four walls of the school. So both of those give great examples of how to support kids get into explore mode. You don't need to be in explore mode in school. All you need for for explore mode is any type of activity, be it outside of school or in school. It could be at home with a parent, right? Where kids are really curious, they're diving in, and as both Joe Squareds talked about, they're developing skills. And they're learning not only just resilience, like I'm interested in doing this, I'm going to try. I'm sure the kids who were baiting their fish, if they tried once and it didn't work, they didn't just be like, that's it, forget it, I'm done, right? They kept going. So there's some of these sort of learning to learn skills that we don't usually measure, honestly, in most of our school systems, but are really essential. So resilience, persistence, openness to new experiences. The kids who are afraid of the grasshopper because they've probably never seen a grasshopper before, and it's totally new and terrifying. All of a sudden, they've realized, wait, I can experience something new. I'm courageous. I can try something else. That openness to new experiences really proves to be incredibly important in adult life success. But in addition to that, you're not sacrificing content knowledge and skill development. You're learning about data, data science, graphing, how to see trends, right? All of the things that Joe Brown overlaid. And I think the big implication for me is any type of pedagogical move that marries knowledge acquisition, like I'm learning a skill, content knowledge, with knowledge application. I'm using that content knowledge to do something, is the sweet spot for explore mode. The reason we see so many kids in explore mode in either the extracurriculars that Joe talked about or the applied learning that Joe Brown talked about is because it's relevant. It's important, it's relevant. Joe Lewis talked about at the very beginning. Why am I doing this? That was almost the number one thing we heard from the 50% of middle school and high school kids who are in passenger mode. They're like, I don't see the point. And it's because they're often learning skills and content knowledge, which is important for them to learn, but it's divorced from how they would use it in the real world. And that's a problem. This idea of transfer is a huge problem. Margie, you know about it from your past service, which is in a sort of more compliance-oriented system, kids are learning formulaically. Okay, I know how to solve the algebra problem because I know what the formula is and I recognize it on the test and I'm going to do that. Or geometry, I know how to solve the area of a rectangle, length times height on my test. One of the students we interviewed who was at a top STEM high school in an East Coast, a good East Coast high school city. His parents told the story of, I asked him to figure out how much paint we needed to paint the fence in the backyard, just one side, a rectangle. He could not figure it out. Couldn't figure it out because it just didn't, he couldn't think about it, just didn't, it looked different. Again, this idea of transfer is a big problem. So I just love everything that Joe Squared is doing. And I think the more school leaders, district leaders, state leaders can support that type of learning, the better off we'll be.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was one of the things I remember from your presentation last summer was being in a room filled with national policy leaders and talking about that movement to explorer mode. Because a decade ago, we would have been very focused solely on the achievement mode. And so what I want to clearly identify that you've said here is that, achievement still matters. Like this is still really important. And that we're still going to focus extensively on making sure that our students are achieving, but we get there a different way. And for our students, when we move into this mode of explorer. So I'm going to ask the Joe Squared a couple of follow-up questions to that. Joe Brown, starting with you, parents might have concerns about outdoor learning along, and what do you say once their children have gone through what do they say once their children have gone through the program?
Yeah, so we are just super blessed here at the Boone County Nature School that this is a program that has been years in the making. And we are really not starting work on this program from the beginning. We're standing on the shoulders of others that have dreamed the idea and have brought the community in and have developed buy-in from the public school side and the conservation department side. And there's just all of these people that have been pouring themselves for years now into making sure that the community understood the potential impact on our kids and that allowed us to have the kind of buy-in that it really has a community behind us. Now, there are a lot of ways that parents can be involved at the nature school. We have you saw pictures of it, evening and weekend programming that's just open to the public, and we definitely leverage our partnerships with the MDC, the Missouri Department of Conservation, for that. So they assist in a lot of that programming. They have programming in addition to CPS programming, and this building is used a lot of evenings and a lot of weekends for the community. We also have a parent teacher night coming up in a couple weeks. It's a different situation here at the nature school. So we're opening our doors to share about the program and to offer tours in our indoor classrooms, but also our outdoor classrooms. We have 13 outdoor classrooms in the middle of forest, prairie, by the pond. And so for parents to get to see those helps them kind of have an idea of what that looks like as well. As far as parent feedback goes, I heard something just hilarious last week. That was something a parent shared, and it really speaks to, I'm taking it as speaking to the power of what our program is doing for our kids. Some students that had been to the nature school, one of their parents overheard her daughter at a sleepover, overheard the girls talking together, and the topic of conversation was how much fun they had at the nature school. And so for me, there's a metric. Like if you get talked about at some kid's sleepover, you're doing something right.
For sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Joe Lewis, kind of on a similar note there, but a different audience. What would you do to advise school administrators and teachers about how to better engage students? What would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, something else that I had been thinking about here, just hearing everybody's insightful answers, is really just been exposure to different opportunities. Something that a lot of youth don't see, and some they might feel unengaged because they just don't know that the opportunities are there. So, I think by having exposure, making sure that everything is advertised adequately, making sure that students know that different things and different ways to be engaged exist. I mean, learning is fun when you know the different outs and ends of it, and you can really, understand how you can be exposed to different extracurricular activities that really tie in with the organizations that I'm in. They're co-curricular, so they provide so many skills that can also be employed in the classroom and in so many different other settings. But in terms of just engagement, my 4-H team working on the state officer team this year, we were planning our junior leadership conference, and something that we were wondering was, how can we get students to be engaged in our workshops? How can we make sure that these workshops are able to help them bring back insightful things to their parishes, parishes instead of counties in Louisiana, insightful things to their parishes, while also making sure that they're having fun, that they're being engaged. And one of the biggest ways that we figured out how to do that is by everyone putting in input and making sure that the students have an opportunity to learn while also being put in a learning scenario where they aren't just sitting down, where they aren't just, writing something down on a paper or something like that, but they're up, that they're active, that they're actively engaged in the lessons. And it's not us just reading off a PowerPoint, but making sure that they're taking in what we're saying and that they can employ it once they get back home. So they can employ those community service activities and different things like that.
Wonderful. That is, and we're going to come back to that one too, in a couple of questions, Joe. So keep thinking about opportunities where you may have had with some of your leaders to really sit down and help them understand the student perspective on some of these issues. That's very important for us. So Joe Brown, I'm going to come back to you, and then Rebecca, I have a follow-up with you, and then we have a couple of questions in the chat that I'd like to jump on. So Joe Brown, what encouragement would you offer to fellow educators who are thinking about taking their students outdoors to learn?
Yeah, so I definitely have some encouragement for those teachers. And the first one is this, that the most powerful tool in your toolbox for outdoor education is the same one that works in your traditional classroom, and that is leveraging your relationships with your students. So that you can help them learn, so that you can facilitate learning. I was surprised when I came out to the nature school and became a teacher out here that I assumed that maybe my naturalist understanding of the world and the factual information that I could share with kids about their surroundings would be very useful. And by far more than that, it's relationships. It comes down to relationships. You already have that as a traditional classroom teacher. If you're a successful teacher, that is your priority, your relationships with your kids. The other piece is that um, actually you don't have to be a master of understanding the outdoor world. It doesn't work like that now. 30 years ago, our teachers were the distributors of the knowledge, the distributors of the facts. And I can just ask Google or my friend ChatGPT if I want to get some facts. And so it really takes the pressure off for teachers that are considering taking their students outdoors. Instead of giving them information, you get to be the lead learner. You get to show them how to ask questions, how to be curious, and there's no pressure in that. There's no silly question. And so, yeah, it is easier than you think it is and much more fulfilling than you could imagine.
Wonderful. Thank you. Rebecca, we're going to take this a little broader now, and we're going to ask you, what can the U.S. learn from other countries' approach to student engagement, outdoor learning, or any kind of experiential education?
Oh, wow. Well, there's many different countries in the world with many different education systems, but my mind just went to Finland, which is very, very cold, as you know, in the winter. In the it's in part of the Nordics. But kids go outside every single day. And I know it can be challenging for students if they don't have the right winter wear, jackets, etc. for many kids. But I literally think that is like one small nudge we can do. Bring kids outside every single day. You know, if you want to do a parent fundraiser, fundraise umbrellas and go for a frickin' walk around the block. Like kids do need fresh air and to be outside and to move their bodies. And they probably but it takes a long time in Finland to bundle them all up and then to unbundle, but they're out there for 15 minutes in the snow, the ice, whatever, and then they come back in and they can concentrate better. So there's been a big move in this country to reduce recess time. Lots of reasons kids aren't necessarily going outside as much as we would like them to. And I think schools, that's the wrong direction if you think about student engagement. So that's one immediate thing that I can think of. The other things that I think are really interesting is kids get a lot more freedom in other countries. I'm sticking with sort of the Finland example. They're they're doing a lot, they have a lot of responsibility. They have responsibility to get themselves to and from school. They have responsibility to pack their lunch. They have responsibility to hang up all their stuff. You know, some Asian countries, they have responsibility to caretake their own classrooms. It's not leave everything and the janitor or, custodial crew will come in and clean up after you. No, it's their responsibility. And they come in every morning and they sweep and they clean and they wipe down as a team, as a group, because we are a collective group and community, and we are here to take care of each other and our set in our settings. And it's not child labor. We're using you. It's a you are big enough. And this starts at kindergarten. You're big enough and responsible enough to participate in the well-being of your community. And you do that in kindergarten by, sweeping the floor and wiping down the top of the desk. So I think that we've infantilized kids a bit too much in many ways here in this country. Inadvertently, I don't think anybody means to do it, but
No, sure.
they have capabilities. They can be seen as contributing members of their community.
I think that's an important thing to hone in on, and let's have Joe Lewis address that. Joe, you have been involved. So basically, what I think I was hearing some of what Rebecca was saying there. First of all, the outdoors is important, but what I'm learning more and more is that it's important for all of us, like all of us, adults, kids, everybody needs to be outside more and doing that. So great point there. But also, you were talking a little bit about the citizen engagement and some of the civics that we have. And so, Joe Lewis, there's a question in the chat really about some of your involvement in things like 4-H, FFA, some of those other organizations. How has that prepared you to make a difference in your community? So sort of, I know all the benefits that those programs have to the school environment that Rebecca was just talking about. How can you tell us firsthand what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny that you say that. So in all the organizations that I'm involved in, and really honestly, not even preparing you, but it's getting you to make a difference in your community now. Like she was saying, we have the tools necessary. We're big enough to start engaging now and starting to make a difference in our community now. So the mission of Future Business Leaders of America is to prepare community-minded business leaders. And that's why I said it was funny that you had said that. But honestly, 4-H, FFA, FBLA, and then other extracurriculars as well have really prepared me to make a difference in my community. And they've given me the opportunity to make a difference now, whether it be at the state level. I've advocated in front of the Louisiana House of Representatives Committee on Agriculture for 4-H and FFA, but also at a local level with my local 4-H programs, we do a plethora of community service activities. I've helped voting drives for high school students, getting them more engaged in civic knowledge and from a nonpartisan type of way, but also or partisan type of way, just making sure that everyone has the ability to continue doing the things, but starting out at a high school level. Really, the engagement that 4-H, FFA, and FBLA provide has really allowed me to make a difference in my community now, and that carries as you go through life. You remember those experiences from a young age.
For sure. And others will remember you too. I don't know how many of us could say it as a high school student, we were able to actually present in a test. I mean, that's a very big deal. And so how do we give more and more students the opportunity that you had to do that and the responsiveness that occurs because you were willing to, I'm sure that wasn't a very comfortable moment for you at the time, but how did you go ahead and do that? And what were the outcomes of it? So great news there. A couple of other things that I want to go. I want to kind of tie back to some of this AI conversation as well. And there's some questions about how are we measuring engagement. I might ask Rebecca and Joe Brown to speak to that, and then Joe Lewis, what we can do to engage more students in this kind of. So be thinking of that in your background. But Joe Brown and I were talking this morning about AI, and Joe, you shared a story about like the birding app and things like that. How does that like play out? Because we do want to prepare our kids, right? We do want to prepare them for the tools and resources that are out there. How do we balance that? You want to share that story? I thought it was interesting.
There we go. Yes, I would. So out here at the nature school, there is an assumption that from community, from kids, that technology works kind of in opposition of what we're trying to accomplish out here. But for me personally, I am using AI every time I'm outside with kids practically, and this is the example that you're referring to. So right now in our winter session, our students are learning about Missouri phenology. So the study of the annual changes, the cycles, the rhythms in Missouri. And one fun piece for kids to kind of dive a little deeper into under that umbrella of phenology is bird migration. The fact that there are different birds here in the winter than there are in the summer, while some of them are here year round. And so the outdoor skill that they're implementing is the ability to use binoculars, and the data they're collecting, and this is some citizen science work for them, is bird counts. They're using bird guides to identify the birds that they can see and documenting the numbers. And so eBird is a wonderful website for us that we use every day to engage kids with some citizen science. But in addition to that, sometimes there's birds we can't see. And one of the most fun apps that I've downloaded in the last year is the Merlin Bird ID app. And so while we're going out looking at birds, I also have my phone recording so that when we hear a bird that we cannot see, that app will identify that bird for us. And so we can include that in our counts. You don't have to see it to know it's there if you can hear it and know it's there. And that's just one approach to leveraging AI instead of taking away from our kids' education, to use it as a tool to learn in a better way, in a more efficient way, and in a deeper way while we're outdoors.
That's great. And so that sort of addresses one of the questions, as your earlier question did too, about that role of the teacher and how that shifts a little bit by using the resources that are available to us and expanding upon that. So, Rebecca, I think I'll toss that to you, because I think that does speak a little bit to your comment about using AI to teach and not tell. I saw that in your
Mhm.
research. But then also, how are we tracking, or how should we be tracking the level of engagement that we're seeing? I think that's another question they have. We're really talking about authentic student engagement. How do we get there? Joe
Mm.
Lewis, I'll be coming to you next with a similar question about that. So go ahead.
So on AI, how can we use it well? I think the Bird app is a great example. So one of the schools that I, lift up, but there's various out there trying to use AI well, is a school in Hawaii. It's a middle school. It's a charter school, public charter school. Half the kids are on free and reduced lunch, and the founder is all in on AI, but there are no sitting in front of screens and students talking to ChatGPT times of the day. What he's doing is teaching them, how does the online world work? How do computers work? Which you can do, by the way, offline. You don't have to sit in front of a computer to learn the basics of computer science, the basics of how AI works. A lot of times when I talk about holistic, really AI literacy, people say, oh, well, that's more screen time. Not necessarily. Doesn't have to be. And then he's teaching them, much like Joe Brown did with his fish measuring exercise, data science and machine learning. So they're going outside and measuring, for example, sea level rises because they live in Hawaii, and then they're taking that data back and they're plugging it into AI to help them do much more sophisticated and rigorous analysis that they can track over time. And that is a great way, sort of research, when of course you then have to go and find, I would say, for every a good practice I've seen another school do is teaching kids how to use it for research. Um, and they say for every generative AI chatbot source you get, you have to find three other sources out there that confirm this data point, which is a great sort of, hey, there's a lot of weird stuff on the web, which is what this is trained on. It might not be accurate. Sort of a great, citizen tool in addition to academic tool. So those are some examples of the appropriate way to use AI, I would say, to really further kids' learning. It's almost, in a way, becomes a little bit more invisible. It's not so front of student experience. It's sort of supporting the sort of in-person analysis thought that kids are having. That is how I think ultimately, if we're going to turn the tide away from the risks towards the benefits, AI will end up being used. In terms of measuring engagement, it's very doable. There's a technical answer, which is you can look at what kids do. Do they show up? Do they do their homework? You can look at how they feel about school. Do they feel they belong? Are they interested? Do they say they love school? That's actually the number. If there's one question a school should ask, it's, do you love school? That's the most highly correlated question to their level of engagement. It's looking at their cognitive engagement. Are they connecting things they're learning in one class to another class? Are they persisting over time? And it's also around the initiative they're taking. Are they making suggestions to make their learning environment more interesting or supportive to themselves? Hey, can I write my paper on that? Hey, can I study with a buddy, for example? So those are those are the ways that the academic world has measured student engagement, and we are exploring if there's a sort of measurement tool. We're doing some exploration with schools currently and hoping to share with others, or if anyone wants to participate, let us know. Joe, I'm not on the hot seat. Tools for students to self-assess which mode they're in.
Mhm. Love that.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe Lewis, you know the question I'm going to ask you, don't you? Do you love school?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
I just- You do. Okay, good. You love school and you can tell you do, and you can tell that you love what you're doing. I think hearing what you have heard from both of our other panelists today, um, how do you think we can better engage more students? Like, what would that look like? And then sort of in conjunction with that, I have to say that when I was your age, I would have never in a million years thought about AI. Like, I just would not have thought that those kinds of tools would be out there. So you really have a seat that I would never have had, right? So help us understand what that's like in your world to be living it on a day-to-day basis in your classrooms. I guess I'm asking you a lot of questions there, Joe. Sorry. So let's start with the first one on student engagement, authentic student engagement. How do we get more kids to say, yes, I love school?
Yeah, absolutely. So, something that really just the basis of that, if a kid doesn't love school, why don't they?
Yeah.
What is the, barrier why they don't love school and what's holding them back from having
Mhm.
an enriching learning experience? I think a lot of the time I see is just kind of like a capitulation thing. Kids just kind of really don't have any direction for where they want to go next, after school. They don't see a reason why they should be there. And that's a lot of the reason why kids, don't love school. But I think if you can have learning, but also have an opportunity for them to get in kind of explorer mode and go out in the real world, see what they want to do, see how that relates to learning, it'll help them love school. And I mean, something in school I always look forward to, you don't look forward to test day on chemistry. You don't necessarily look forward to, a big math exam, but things you do look forward to are, engaging with your classmates. And if you have a good relationship with, your teacher, as the other Mr. Brown was saying, the other Joe was saying, just making sure that there's something there that's drawing them in because just looking at it from a standpoint of yes, we're learning about things that we might not necessarily use in the real world, but it's mental stimulation, getting them involved, making them use their brains, problem solving skills, learning those type of things, which are going to be beneficial in the real world. And I think figuring out why they don't love school and what you could potentially add to make them love school, how they could change their learning. I mean, even in something that I've seen, I've made different comments to my principal and administration. We can make school more engaging by, adding incentives. If our school does well on our, standardized state tests, we can have a pizza party or something like that. Just adding incentives and adding things that make school more enjoyable because when you have a goal, usually you're going to do better. If your goal is that pizza party or something like that, you're usually going to be more engaged and you're going to do more. So adding incentives and making sure that those students that don't love school have a voice to explain why they don't.
Love it. That's really important. What do you have to say about the digital world that we're in now, or anything about uh, AI resources that might be available?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's here.
Yeah.
It is it's an incredible tool, first and foremost. I mean, something that I've learned too is looking at the drawbacks from AI. The biggest thing is, and I would kind of said it earlier, is mental stimulation, not being able to use your brain to, problem solving skills and different things like that. Because I think in learning, one of the biggest things is struggle. You learn when you don't get it right away and you have to kind of struggle to get to the answer. And AI kind of takes away from that because your mind isn't being stimulated. You're just getting an answer instantly. But I think that it's a tool that should continue to be used because it really cuts down out on a lot of things that you don't necessarily see. So like I was studying for a test, right? And I had all my study materials, but they weren't centralized. I didn't have everything I needed in the right places. So being able to put those study materials into, some type of chat box or an AI tool where it can instantly create you a study guide so you can do well on your test the next day is an example of how artificial intelligence can be used in a positive way. So we have to make sure that the mental stimulation is still there while also looking at how it can be used as a tool and how it can do things for you that might have taken hours, but you're still learning the material and your mind is still being stimulated.
Great. Another teaching, not telling moment there. And I think that's really powerful information. Thank you. We have a pretty another good question in the chat here that's talking about it. It sounds like our viewers are liking this concept of moving to explorer mode, but are wondering how teachers can do that when they're under so much pressure to prepare students for high stakes testing. We're talking a lot about standards-based learning still. Is it possible? So Rebecca, you're nodding. Go ahead.
It's such a good question. It's a question we get repeatedly. And the answer is it is possible. I want to talk about the work of an academic named John Marshall Reeve, who's done 20 years in the US and 19 other countries of randomized control trials, the sort of highest level of rigorous study. And they're within school studies where he's trained some of the teachers in the school to use what he calls autonomy supportive teaching practices. They're very small nudges. And then he compares sort of level of motivation, engagement, mental health, and academic outcomes in the classes over time with the teachers who are using those and those that don't, and looks at the kids over time. And 20 years of research really shows that it makes a really big difference in getting kids into what he calls agentic engagement. We call it explorer mode, sort of where agency meets student engagement, where you're not engaged, but not like achievers of I have to do everything perfect and follow exactly everything, but oh, I'm really curious. I'm going to try to figure this out. I'm interested in the learning journey. And some of these nudges, some of these sort of small things, and you have to kind of do them all together, are things like asking for students feedback around about the lesson, what went well, what didn't, what was frustrating, did you need to something to clarify at the end of the lesson? It could be on a note card that they, leave an exit ticket, a sticky note, whatever. Teachers then they'll have to do something with that feedback. You can't ignore it. Look at it, and then you have to come back the next day and say, okay, I got a bunch of comments on this, and then you have to address it. That together with things, again, small things like before you um, give a lesson and start instruction, framing the topic and then asking, waiting for 1 minute, 2 minute, and saying, is anybody curious about this topic or have any questions on this topic? So, for example, today we're going to talk about the solar system. I'm going to walk you through, I don't know, order of the planets, whatever it is. Does anybody have any questions about the solar system? Are you curious? And it could be, why is Pluto not a planet? Where'd Pluto go? Or, whatever it is. Are we actually going to go to Mars? And then you have to address that and you kind of start your lesson there. Now, the number one problem that teachers complain about with that particular sort of small autonomy supportive teaching practice is that students don't have any questions. They ask this and there's crickets, which is just a sign that kids have been desocialized to enter a classroom with curiosity and they're waiting passively to receive. And he says, look, teachers have to do it for 2 weeks straight. It's painful, it's hard, but once you do it after this 2 week period, his research shows, then kids start leaning in and then they're starting the lesson forward on their, already engaged. Like, what are my questions? I'm already thinking about the topic. And then there's a bunch of others like that, but he has shown that in really sort of hierarchical systems like South Korea to the US to Peru to Canada to Israel, these things work. And it's a classroom teacher who can do it no matter your school leader, no matter your standards, no matter your curriculum, no matter your assessment practices. So it is possible. And
That's
what's more, to your point, Margie, was really important, the kids who got into explorer mode got way better grades than the kids in achiever mode.
We used to always say the score will take care of itself. That's like a quick way of saying it. If you get people engaged and curious, that's the key thing. Well, unfortunately, I think our time is coming to an end here, so I'm going to have to wrap up pretty quickly. 30 seconds or less. I'm going to ask our panelists 30 seconds or less. A big takeaway that you want to say, something that you didn't get a chance to say. Rebecca, I'll start with you. Joe Brown and Joe Lewis, I'm going to give you the final word, and then I'll give you some follow-up points so we can wrap up. Rebecca, 30 seconds or less. What do you think?
Um, The thing I've been thinking about the most right now is about creativity and students' generative AI use. And I think we need to keep a close eye on it because it might improve kids' sort of individual creative products. But I think the data is pointing to a direction that shows that it's doing it all in the same way. So kids are getting some much more similar ideas. That's something that came out of our task force research, and I think is something that we should all really keep an eye on because that does not bode well for the ability of our society in the future to come up with new ideas to solve problems if we all end up thinking the same way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca. Joe Brown, 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, this is very deeply local and personal, but the slides that Rebecca showed, there was one with a graph that showed the four modes of engagement, and there's this shift where things kind of flip-flop. Um, I get asked all the time, why is it fifth graders that come out to the nature school? Why that age? And the original visionaries of the nature school dream chose that grade for a lot of specific reasons. And just in the moment while you were showing that graph, it's like, there's another reason. There's huge transitions happening in the minds of our students right now. So this is a great opportunity to leverage outdoor learning in a way that everyone gets a hold of it, everyone can experience it in fifth grade.
Wonderful. Thank you. Joe Lewis, bring it home for us.
Yeah, so just in hearing everything, all the insightful comments that my fellow panelists made, something that has just been sitting in my head was just give kids the opportunity to find their spark. A lot of time, kids don't know what they want to do in life. They don't know where they want to end up, and they don't know how to get engaged because they don't know. And what I always recommend is just give them a push in the right direction. Give them the opportunity for them to join different organizations, to get to see new experiences, to get to go new places, because that makes all the difference.
Wonderful. Perfect way to wrap it up. Um, I want to thank our panelists. I knew you guys would be great. You were phenomenal. What fun. I really appreciate it. Learned a lot today. Just to wrap up, you all out there know that this is the second of a three-part series on student engagement. And so you will receive an email with a link for a survey for this webinar. Please fill that out. And then also know that we have an event that's on your screen right now, Liberty and Learning Civics Education at 2:50. So stop by that. For more information, you can reach out to someone at Aspen to get that information. And then also tune in for the third webinar that'll be coming your way shortly as we conclude our series. So again, thanks to our panelists. Thanks to each of you for joining us. Hope you can join the table in Philadelphia. That would be great. And I think we'll wrap it up with that. So have a great day and go explore something, preferably outside if you can. Thanks. All right. Talk to you soon.